All right, welcome to the channel. And tonight we have a very, very special edition of the Contemplative Reader because for the first time I have a guest on my channel, and my guest is Britton from the channel SomeOkieDude. So, Britton, welcome to our discussion today, and I look forward to talking with you about the graphic novel Daredevil Born Again. So, Britton, why don't you talk about your channel for a moment and just a little bit of your history about reading comics and graphic novels?
Yeah, I'm Britton. I'm also known as SomeOkieDude. I run a channel where I talk about books and comics and a lot of stuff that I'm quite fascinated by. I do stream from time to time as well. Yeah, but anyway, um, yeah, I just kind of talk about. I'm really passionate about storytelling, so I just talk about that on the channel. But mainly, it's about books and comics that I just find fascinating. As with comics, I mean, I've been reading them since I was a kid. I first started reading them. I was a big fan of the old Spider-Man films from the early 2000s and Batman the Animated Series. But I didn't really read comics frequently until I was maybe 12 or 13. I started reading like The Walking Dead and some other kind of creator owned type of stuff. And then I kind of went back to like Marvel and DC type of stuff. Um and that's how I've ended up here basically.
Right, right. Yeah, I think you've talked before in your channel and in comments in a few other videos as well about there are certainly comic and graphic novel booktubers out there, and there are fantasy and science fiction booktubers, and there's different kind of groupings of booktubers, but they're really amongst those who identify more in the fantasy science fiction space. There's only a relative few that seem like to regularly talk about comics and graphic novels, and you certainly are one of them. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
actually one of the reasons I started this iteration of the channel I have now. Well, I mean, I'm not on my channel. What am I doing? Anyway, I'm used to doing podcasts here. Uh but I one of the reasons I started the iteration of my channel I started now is because I had noticed not a lot of them talk about like on fantasy and science fiction tube, booktube don't always talk about like comics from like Western media. Yeah, I think some people kind of still think of them as mainly superhero, which is true, but it's slowly changed over time. Like I think there are definitely some comics I think like BookTube would really love, like Saga, for instance, is one I always think of. Uh, but there is still a lot of superhero stuff, and a lot of people, you know, still love that genre. It's very it's what I like to call it one of the great American myths, the
right,
superhero.
right. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. About and obviously tonight we're talking about classic Marvel superhero Daredevil, but
Hmm.
um, yeah, I know that there's some other things coming up on your channel and in a project that we have in mind. Reading Blankets, which is definitely a non superhero graphic novel. So there will,
Yeah.
yeah, more opportunity for that discussion in the future. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that, as far as our connection, I've only been doing this booktube thing a fraction of the time that you have. So I had just started about, roughly a year ago. And you were the very first one to reach out to me to talk to me on your channel. So since this is my first time having a guest on my channel, I think it was only appropriate that you would be the first one to come on here. So
Yeah, I
even
appreciate that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So and so the idea for this particular discussion came about because before Christmas, so around a month or two ago, you recorded a video in which you recommended uh, to various booktubers a certain comic or graphic novel that they might enjoy or be interested in. And for me, you selected Daredevil Born Again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this one. Yeah, I have the same one.
Marvel Premier Collection, kind of a nice line of relatively inexpensive graphic novels from Marvel there. So, what is your what's your history with this particular graphic novel, and why did you recommend it to me, if you remember?
Well, well, for one, I thought you would appreciate the religious symbology and themes in the story because Frank Miller plays a lot with that. Um, well, Daredevil's one of my favorite superheroes. Aside from like Batman and Spider-Man, I find him quite fascinating. I actually remember the guy who wrote this, Frank Miller, put it in a documentary once that like he was just like, well, how many superheroes are known for what they can't do? Um, Daredevil's blind; he can't see, which is kind of ironic because he's a lawyer, and this old saying, you see the justice is blind.
Yeah,
um, I can't remember the first time I read this comic. It's always just kind of been there as far as I know. It was probably when the Daredevil TV show came out around is when I finally maybe read it for the first time. But yeah, I mean Frank Miller is a creator who's very well regarded in a lot of comics, in American comics anyway. He did stuff like The Dark Knight Returns and this book. He did some other work on Daredevil. Um, did Batman Year One, which is with the same collaborator as this book. I actually prefer Year One to this book for reasons I'm sure we'll get into. Um, but yeah, I remember being really fascinated with again kind of that religious symbology and the fact that um and this isn't new. Ever since Miller kind of came on the scene and reimagined Daredevil, he's kind of made it a thing where Matt Murdock's always this kind of underdog character. He always gets kicked down. Um, and Born Again kind of feels like what's a term? What's a good word for it? A culmination of that kind of thinking. Though things do get a lot worse for Matt Murdock. Some of the runs he's been
right.
in. But this one's one of the most famous, where he just goes through the ringer, and but he comes back. So yeah, I hope
Definitely
that's a
is
good answer.
right. That's perfect. And as we'll get into some of the, yeah, again, I think it was a spot on recommendation that you thought I might be interested in the.
Well, I thought you might get kind of annoyed with me because it was Catholic related and you're Lutheran. I'd be like, oh, we need more Lutheran superheroes. But
Not, I don't I don't know if there is one, to be honest. There probably is somewhere. I've forgotten about it. Um, no, that was great, and most of my a lot of my continuing education and the uh, things I do these days are associated with the Catholic Church anyway. So I'm certainly well versed in Catholic theology and practice. So this was right up my alley for sure. Um, just a so again, this is the Marvel Premier Collection. I like this line of books that Marvel's putting out. It's a little bit bigger than the DC Compact comics that are coming out, which release a storyline at a relatively inexpensive price. The list price of this is only $14.99, but I think you can get it cheaper than that most places. So it's a nice way to pick up a classic story. For me, Daredevil, I knew of Daredevil as a kid. I mean, he's been around since the 60s, I would guess. One of the classic Marvel heroes. But so I think I had a few issues of Daredevil as a kid,
hmm
but didn't really follow the character. And then I um, I I think I really kind of stopped reading comics by my late teens anyway. So this actually came out in 1986 when I've been 16 years old.
mm.
The comics again. These are issues 227 to 233 of that run of Daredevil. Um, and so this was totally off my radar screen, and I didn't think I followed Daredevil again until I did see the movie with Ben Affleck. Gosh, it's probably been 20 years ago now. So that was really my only kind of secondary experience with Daredevil. I haven't watched the show. I should note probably too as well that um, there is the latest iteration of the Daredevil street show on streaming networks is Daredevil Born Again, but I have not seen that. Have you seen that?
I saw the first episode. I haven't watched the whole thing, but I have watched the
Oh,
original show, which I think is really, really good. And
okay,
when you watch like season three, you'll be like, "Huh, they really went in with the Born Again story." Because, oh
right,
man, that was such a beautiful. I thought it was a very beautiful adaptation. Well, they
right,
did change
right.
some stuff, but it's very close, or maybe not very close, but it's very uh it's very faithful. I guess that's what I'll say. It's very faithful to what
Okay,
the original story was going for.
very good, very good. So again, just you kind of alluded to the basic storyline, and this is a story of Daredevil. And what I appreciate the recommendation, and I did really enjoy the story. It is a story. You start off with Daredevil has reached the absolute lowest of the low. He has
Hmm.
um, been, his arch nemesis Kingpin has orchestrated this uh, um, pattern of just totally destroying his life, destroying his law practice,
Hmm.
having him charged criminally by being set up, messes with his life. He loses everything. The IRS has frozen all of his bank accounts. He has nothing. He's been torn down completely, and is to the point of basically living on the streets or in horrible little hotels or things like that to just to survive. Um, and the story then is this arc of redemption, arc of resurrection. Again, that's probably the primary religious theme of this story is death and resurrection. Including some parts in the story which involve a near literal death and resurrection from that, but also metaphorical. He dies to his old self, and what rises in its the story is his arc is coming back to life, so to speak, and but in a new and a different way. He's not the same Matt Murdock, not the same Daredevil as he was before. So I don't know if that's what some of the main themes that you got out of it, or what else you
Yeah,
were thinking.
it's
Again, we're kind of in the right now we're general non-spoiler territory. We'll talk specifics in a little bit.
yeah, I one of the things I always found interesting about Daredevil, I mean, aside from the fact he's blind and he's a lawyer who also is a vigilante, um, like I do find it interesting that like he is religious and it's not like played as like it's not played as like something that's holding him back. It's something he takes very seriously and it's something he wrestles with sometimes. Maybe not so much in well, a little bit in this story, but I find here um what am I trying to say? I I do find it interesting when the Kingpin does decide to go after Daredevil because he figures out his identity. Is that he doesn't just bum rush him like some like lesser or maybe not lesser, but like other villains might just go to his house and like kill him or blow him up. No, the Kingpin will. It was funny. I heard someone compare it to the story of Job, and that didn't cross my mind till no, not too long ago actually. Um, where it's like he takes away everything. And but Daredevil, Matt Murdock is so he has that like inner core of strength. Like you can tear everything away from him, he'll come back like two times stronger, every time.
Right, right. Yeah, within the first few pages of this, I was picking up on the Job connection, where at the beginning of the book of Job from the Old Testament in the Bible, he indeed has lost everything. He's lost his family, lost his livestock, lost his uh, everything that he owned, his way of living was wiped out, and so the whole narrative of the book after that then is him dealing with that first by these conversations with his so-called friends about what has happened to him, and then ultimately confronted by God Himself, and um, and he things are restored for him, and he gets a new family, and things move on for Job. And again, Daredevil, Matt Murdock, yeah, there's nothing left for him. I mean, it's even he has his own girlfriend taken away from him by his former law partner. um,
Best friend, yeah.
you know, yeah, right, best friend.
Yeah, he becomes
What?
like a paranoid wreck of a man by the end of the
Right? Yeah,
first issue. You're like,
right,
geez.
right. So what I actually like too about this particular edition of Daredevil Born Again is it includes again the Born Again storyline starts at 227, but Frank Miller and artist David Mazzucchelli actually did a standalone story one issue prior to that, Daredevil 226, and that's included
Hmm.
in the back of this printing of Born Again. And I think that for me, again, not remembering a lot about the Daredevil story, or where this was picking up from, that actually helped me understand the when I read that after the conclusion of the Born Again storyline. I I thought that helped because it started to show the beginnings of Matt Murdock's descent, in terms of he was their law firm was in the process of closing down. Things were not looking up for him. But I also thought it foreshadows some of the also important religious themes that Miller would expound upon in the Born Again storyline, because in again issue 226, his nemesis is this guy, um, Melvin Potter, who is the gladiator, I believe, is a his name, and, and Matt Murdock is 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 it wants both wanting to achieve justice, but also is 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 going about it in a compassionate Christian way, in the sense that he he once he finds out this poor guy's predicament. It's an interesting thing that a pure vigilante out. More importantly, he's out for justice.
Okay.
Okay, so we are back. We had a little bit of an internet glitch there. So again, not quite sure where we were when we
You were talking about the story Warriors.
yeah,
You were
yeah,
mentioning something about Melvin Potter.
yeah. So there was it I think it foreshadows some of the things that Matt Miller would go into more detail, um,
Hmm.
in the Born Again storyline. And again, I think this whole arc, again, starting with that warrior storyline, was um, in this arc of fall and redemption of justice, but also tempered by mercy.
Hmm.
So those are very interesting. But yes, I think, going back to your original point, I think Job is kind of the book of the Bible that lays the heart of this, but um, also death and resurrection. There's a point in the story where um, the uh, again maybe we're getting into a little bit of a spoiler territory here, but Karen, his ex girlfriend Karen, is the one that sold his name to get
Hmm.
a drug fix to for so Kingpin knew Matt Murdock's identity as Daredevil, and Karen then later on is confessing to him and apologizing to him, and saying you've lost everything. And Daredevil, the most beautiful line in the whole book is Daredevil responds by saying, "I've lost nothing." And
Hmm.
that is very much in the line. That is very much a Christian sentiment in the sense that um, Jesus says that to gain your life, you must lose it. And so
Hmm.
the devil certainly lost his old life, and a new one was coming up in his place uh, as a result of that.
Yeah, I mean, I find the story isn't just the kind of death and resurrection of Daredevil, if you want to call it that. It's also about the redemption of Karen Page as well. Um, it's interesting. There is an original run that Frank Miller did of Daredevil, like several years before he did this. I haven't actually read that run. I've read. It's kind of funny. I've read everything around that run, but I've not read the actual run. Um, but this is kind of a coda, I guess, to that. But yeah, no, yeah, Karen Page is kind of one of the major focuses of the story as well. She goes through quite a bit in this, and she's also searching, I think, for redemption as well.
Right. Yeah. Again, so the storyline begins with her. She's in Mexico and she's strung out on. I think I don't know if it named the drug, but I assumed it was heroin or something
Mm,
along those lines. And just looking for the next fix. And she gets it by selling out her ex Matt, and then she falls in love with another supplier down there, and that he plays a part in the story later on. But let's go ahead. We kind of talked generally, mostly non-spoilery thoughts about the book, about our thoughts about it and the themes of it. So I'm just going to make a little wave the red flag at this point that from here on out, I think uh, no guarantees that we're not going to be talking spoilers to talk some specifics here about what happens in the storyline. So if that is something you don't want to know, this might be a good time to stop watching the video. But if you are familiar with the story, or you don't care and you just want to hear us talk about what happened in this story or the religious themes of it, by all means, keep watching. So, um, yeah. So again, we've kind of talked about some of the basics ones: death and resurrection, Joe, connections to Job, the general Catholic imagery of it. I think also just going on lines of Karen and Matt, I think a huge one, which is a connection to the Catholicism of Murdoch, is guilt and redemption, confession and absolution. I think are a huge themes of this story. Not necessarily in the sense of confession to a priest. There isn't a priest that shows up in this story. There's a nun, Maggie.
mm,
Um, again, spoiler. We're in the spoiler territory. Turns out to be his mom, uh,
mm.
but Murdoch's mom, and it's not specifically stated, but
He just goes like, "Are you my mom?" And he hears her heart
yeah,
skip a beat.
she denies it, but his super senses pick up that she's not telling the truth. Um, but yeah, so what made me think of this was when you talked about Karen and the redemption of Karen. That was a powerful scene of confession,
Hmm.
um, and seeking forgiveness. And even Murdoch himself is, even though he was framed this whole time, there was a sense of guilt for who he is and what he does, and seeking forgiveness and a new life, a new start. This where he's not burned down by that guilt. So I think it's Murdoch, it's Karen. Um, I think various figures in this story are dealing with that dynamic. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's kind of two stories going on at once. It's it's the story of Matt Murdock's life just slowly imploding, explode. His apartment building blows up. So I guess it
Right.
is. I guess it is getting blown up, literally.
Right.
Uh, but it's quite fascinating. It's just kind of, Frank Miller is kind of known as this kind of hard-boiled, kind of this is a very hard-boiled story for sure. It's very much a crime comic when we first kind of appear in the story, but if you really think about it, there is like a romanticism in a lot of his work, particularly like characters, these kind of over the top romantic characters, figures, kind of standing up and doing the right thing, which is also kind of a theme throughout the story. We see with characters like Ben Urich, the journalist. Um,
Right. Right. Yeah. Huge character that shows up, midway through the story. Um, and his navigating what to do, he starts going down the rabbit hole of seeing what happened to Murdoch and trying to exonerate him, and figuring out the kingpins behind that. But then his fingers get broken up, and this
mm,
wild nurse comes on the scene who's a bulldog and starts beating the tar out of everybody.
yeah, in Frank Miller's work, there's always weird stuff like that. There's like this big like woman in The Dark Knight Returns who called Bruno, who runs around shooting. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
He has an off
So
kilter imagination, is what I'll say.
when, when was his Batman the Dark Knight Returns? Would that have been after
I
this, or was that
think that
around?
was 87, if I remember correct. So I think it was after this.
Right. Yeah. So this is 86. So been right
Mm,
after that. And that kind of goes back to my point earlier about, I read comics as a kid in the late 70s and early 80s. And kind of, didn't read much comics then for a long time. Um, so when I started picking up Visit from Your Kitty, huh?
mm,
The kind of going back and seeing issues, streams like that, whether it was Miller's Batman or this Daredevil storyline, or you know Spawn coming on the scene in the 1990s, and there was a radical shift in the tone and content of comics.
mm.
When I was the ones I was reading as a kid, so the Superman lines of the late 70s, and even Batman, versus what was going on by the mid to late 80s. So that was a very interesting time in comic books, and this is certainly evidence of that. So this is brutal. We
Yeah, no,
we exchanged a few messages, and you mentioned this storyline is dark, and my goodness, there's not only just Daredevil, but there's just graphic descriptions. There's drug use, there's uh,
yeah, no,
mass murder. It's all in there. But I think it makes the redemption arc that much more profound, really.
yeah. I mean, with Frank Miller again, I don't know how to describe it really. There's this kind of, I guess, lack of self-awareness in his work. That I sometimes chide him for. There are some parts of, even in this, there are some parts I'm just kind of like, yeah. But but at the same time, I kind of find that lack of self-awareness fascinating because, it means he would do things that like maybe more like studied creator, someone a bit more even-handed. What I call like an Alan Moore more even-handed. I don't know, but like I don't think Alan Moore could do a story like this. If we're talking specific creators, I don't know if like a Brian Michael Bendis could do a story like this. Even though in his own run on Daredevil, he basically takes this story and just runs with it to its logical conclusion. Um, but I don't know. It's quite fat. I mean, I think you especially see it in like The Dark Knight Returns, but in this, it's a bit more uh again, I hope I'm describing this well.
No, that's very helpful.
um
Go ahead.
I guess maybe it's like I always say with superhero stories, if you want to make a really good one, you have to have sincerity. Because if you think about a costume guy running around beating up people, it is a bit absurd. So you kind of have to run with it a little bit.
Right, right, right. I did read some as I was reading a little bit of the backstory. I saw that Miller is not a person of faith; he was an atheist. But I thought he was very respectful and not was not writing about Daredevil's faith or the back or the faith of his nun mother. Um, which I'll be interested in. I don't know if there's other stories in the Daredevil line about more about her backstory, but um, those always. Well, there was no. I didn't sense any, anti um, faith agenda going on here. I thought it was a fairly respectful one. So I did appreciate that because sometimes I do pick up on, there's a, religious people are stupid or extreme fundamentalists and don't
I was about to
see.
say, if you want that, you should. There is Garth Ennis's Preacher out there.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know if you would like that though.
Let's.
I love that series. I think it's great, but it's not one where there's an even-handedness when it comes to like religious
Right,
matters.
right, 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 right. Well, I'll tell you, going back to your comment about self-awareness and um, the way he writes stories as to Frank Miller. I'll tell you what I didn't. I like the whole storyline from beginning to end. That was
Oh no, it's a very good story. I
great.
mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
Oh,
I don't
I,
want to
I
take
was just
over
going
your
to say,
show.
no, that's it's you're my guest, so it's your platform to talk about whatever you want. I was just going to say, you come back to what you want in a minute. I was just say the one thing that I thought was kind of strange was the shift in the last two issues of
I was
that
going to ask,
run.
was it the nuke? Was it nuke?
Yeah, that was. It's like I was hoping, where is the Titanic final, the big battle with Kingpin?
I
I
mean
mean,
that kind of is the final
and then
battle. Yeah, the
King
one of the reasons I
or
think. Oh, sorry.
whatever, some sort of um, resolution to that, and it did come to some extent later, but go ahead. Nope.
Oh,
Go ahead,
sorry. I
Britton.
was just letting my cat out.
I think we got some connections issue again. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you a little bit, but hold on. I don't know what is going on here. There we go. I can hear
There
you
we
better
go.
now.
Can you hear me okay, Britton?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Or I can hear you better anyway. You were kind of going robotic there for a minute.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. Uh, um, Gotta take care of. Yes, my cat has left me alone tonight. So, yeah, the nuke thing.
Yeah.
Okay, nuke. Yeah, I'm getting notifications on my screen here that there's low bandwidth. I'm not quite sure where that's coming from, but um, so the nuke thing all
Hold on, let me.
super soldier, Vietnam vet, and it kind of turns into this really wild. Kind of lost the focus on Daredevil and Resurrection, all that, but it seemed
Oh, oh, oh.
okay. we got disconnected and back on. I don't know what something's wonky with the connection here for some reason.
Gotta
Um,
love technology.
yes, I'm hoping this is all in one recording here, but we'll see. Um, yeah. So the nuke.
Yeah, so
What
Nuke
was your thoughts
was
on the nuke development on the last bits of the story?
yeah, that's actually where I cuz they did another collaboration together, Mazzucchelli and Frank Miller, which is my personal favorite thing that Frank Miller's ever done. It's Batman Year One. I Can I pull it out? You know what? I'll pull out my copy. Give me a second here.
Yeah, sure.
This is the copy that I own. I love this. This is great. In my top five Batman stories of all time. But not to sidetrack too much into my love of this book. But I found that the climax of Born Again, even though it makes sense, it is set up. It is like, okay, we're gonna get Nuke, and he's gonna fight Daredevil, and the art from David Mazzucchelli. I mean, my God, he sorry. Uh, but yeah, no, some of the art is just best some of the best action choreography that um David Mazzucchelli has ever done. Just really, really magnificent work. But yeah, I do think it's a bit overblown nonetheless. I felt it kind of detracted from this kind of story of redemption and faith that Miller was telling, in my opinion. I know there's some people who might feel differently, but um
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's helpful background there. For me,
um
familiar with that story.
what I was trying to say with Year One, I feel the climax in that book is far more grounded and far more believable. It's probably because I find Frank Miller does his best work when he has an editor to go like, "Hey, probably not a great idea there," or "Hey, this might be a good idea." So that's my suspicion. I could be wrong on that, but I find when you let him run free, you get some pretty out there stuff. Um, but yeah, no, I will give him credit. They do set up Nuke, but yeah, I do find he kind of detracts from the kind of more grounded story he was telling. Even though this is technically still a
Right.
superhero story.
Yeah, it is. It just, yeah, like I said, it would just seem strange that, again, being this gritty crime drama, and all of a sudden there's kind of all these superheroes and supervillains that show up. It was yeah, just seemed odd to me, but
So
it
that
didn't
said, he
just
does give an amazing line to Captain America where he says, "I'm loyal to nothing, General, except the dream," which is like, yeah, that's great. But aside from
right,
that, I mean,
right,
like yeah,
right,
Nuke is just kind of I mean, I like to describe him.
right,
He's kind of like if Captain America went wrong, basically.
right. Well, and I thought that's interesting you say that, because that goes to my thought that, yeah, oh
Here's him just massacring a bunch of
yeah,
people in
yeah,
Nicaragua.
yeah. Even Nuke was did horrible things, in in Latin America, and then obviously in the Hell's Kitchen area of New York, just murders a bunch of people who are just bystanders to what's going on with him and Daredevil. And but Daredevil, I mean, ultimately there's a sense of and Captain America plays a part in this too, a sense of, you've been manipulated into this. You're being fed these drugs that are
Hmm.
creating havoc in your personality, and you're being fed lies by Kingpin about who Daredevil is. And so there was a sense of somewhat of mercy on Nuke, even though the horrible things that he had done.
Hmm.
It wasn't just kill him and get him out of the way. It was, deal with him
Yeah,
in
like they actually kind of make you feel bad for him towards the end when he unfortunately he gets mortally wounded and they try to save his life, but unfortunately they can't.
right,
Um,
right,
it
right.
is
Yeah,
played for like tragedy, like like I don't think Nuke is meant to be like a kind of one note character, but
exactly,
um,
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
he's the closer though, basically.
Right, right. Yeah, again, it reminded me. It goes back to that the issue before the start of the Born Again run was, Daredevil's mercy and compassion on his adversary in that story. Um, Again, Melvin Potter, the this warrior gladiator guy, he kind of showed
Hmm.
up again with Newt, that he was not just some nameless arch nemesis, mustache twirling villain, but a human being who was just very twisted by circumstance, unfortunately, and ended up doing horrible things. Um, so again, I think that plays in the um, in kind of the narrative of the, if you kind of think of the religious themes of the story, that perhaps nobody is beyond redemption in Daredevil's eyes, because he sees through the eyes of faith. No pun intended there, considering his uh, his disability. But um, yeah, I think that the what I got out of it too is just, there's Daredevil is plagued by all of these things. Murdoch is, but there's a he overcomes that eventually, just by faith in the human spirit, in hope that there is something there, and his faith. Although the specifics of faith are not spelled out. He's not running around quoting Bible verses. That makes it actually even more that much more effective, I think.
There's not
They
really a
just
lot of time for that, honestly.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's yeah. He's got a life to recreate, not instead of just going around spouting Bible verses.
He's
Um,
not like eating dinner with Foggy. He's like, I was at a seminary the other day, or I'm sorry, I'm not Catholic, but he's like, oh,
yeah. Right.
I was at,
Right.
I was at mass the other day,
Right. 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 Down at the mission with the sisters talking about stuff. Right. But again, I loved how he continued to incorporate the story of the sisters and the sister Maggie and the nuns in the background there, because when this massacre does happen in Hell's Kitchen, they're first in line to help treat people, and again
Hmm.
show the humanity and the compassion that that these people have. So yeah, I just, the other thing I wanted to point out too is, I love the he does effective jobs framing the arc of the story too, just through the names of each issue. Again, there's
Hmm.
what, 6 issues in this storyline. It goes from apocalypse, and again, the biblical meaning of apocalypse isn't just the end of the world; it's also an unveiling. It's an opening our eyes to something.
I thought it meant like change.
Yeah, unveiling to something different. Yeah,
Hmm.
yep, a vision of something new. Then to purgatory, again, in Catholic theology, that state of purgation, after death, before receiving the beatific vision of eternal life. There's this kind of purging of the continuing effects of sin, and Murdoch's certainly dealing with that in a whole in a lot of ways there, because of what's going on at that point of the story. So yeah, apocalypse, purgatory, pariah, but then born again,
Yeah.
and then saved, and God and country, and that's where Newt comes in there. Um,
Yeah. Though I will say, even though I don't love the climax of the story, when Nuke shows up and they have that big kind of bombastic fight, I do really like the ending when Kingpin's like, "Oh no, I'm not legit anymore." Like he loses his reputation and whatever. And this just amazing wide panel of
right?
him
Yes.
and Karen Page walking
Yeah.
together. That's just
Just totally
beautiful. That's great. It's just kind of that.
right.
I remember even reading through this. I'm just like, can we get to the ending already?
Right. Right. Yeah. That's a
Which is
lovely.
kind of bad because like this is a very good story. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just kind of like
Right.
it just gets a little bombastic, and you're like, oh, okay, well, all right.
Right. Yeah. Karen, I just shows, it's a very effective by Mazzucchelli, the artist, of showing the, you know, when he's drawing Karen in the midst of drug use, but then
Yeah,
when she's off the drugs, what she looks like there again. Very
yeah,
effective.
no, if you don't mind me just going, just having just absolutely, gooning over this artwork. Yeah, David Mazzucchelli is one of my favorite illustrators. Like, I love which I can't give it all to him. The colorist, Max Shiel, I think is her name. Um, and oh, Richmond Lewis did some of the colors. He also did the colors for Batman Year One. But anyway, I love some of the colors, like this right here at the very beginning. I just loved you could see the window shades there. You see that a couple times
Right.
actually. Like J. Jonah Jameson. This shot right here is just magnificent. I'm also just a big fan of that kind of cartoon, like what'd you say?
Yeah, that was beautiful. Yeah, I love that
Oh,
image.
or this right here with J. Jonah Jameson. Again, the colors, I miss old comic book coloring, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Um, Max Shield, I gotta give her credit. I think it's a woman actually, but I have to give her credit there. But I really love that kind of like cartoon, very simple, very clean art style. And some of the action choreography in this is also just magnificent. Frank Miller's always been really good at that, for better or for worse. And Mazzucchelli is really good at it too. So, I mean, this was like the last superhero stuff that he ever did, which, oh man, very sad. But what a way he went out. He does like kind of arty stuff now. Like he did one called like Astros Polyp, if I remember correctly. I haven't read that yet. I would love to though, because I love his artwork. Um,
Yeah. I think, and um, that again, maybe to go back to just the Catholic ethos of this story, I think
mhm.
is really aided by the artwork here. I think if you were to read this story just as a prose narrative without the imagery, I think it would not be come across as powerful. But when you're faced with images like that one which you showed of of Matt Murdock, dying essentially,
Yeah,
and yeah,
he's just exhausted. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's is what a beautiful image that. And then then the image with
Then he gets pneumonia, and you're just like, oh my god.
yeah,
It's like,
when
oh
he
my
died.
lord.
I mean, he's dead. I mean, I think his heart stopped there at one point, but then he
Oh
came
yeah,
back.
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it is literal death and resurrection in addition to the metaphorical. But yeah, I think the artwork really does help with thinking through the faith aspect. Maybe that's why not as much needed to be said in the actual
Hmm.
storyline or the dialogue, because you see it in the artwork. You see it in
Hmm.
the imagery of the mission in the church. You see it in the image of the cross. That what a beautiful image that was. That um, you know um, Daredevil has the flashback to when he was first blinded. Hit by
Yeah,
this
that's a really great sequence.
radioactive truck.
Oh yeah,
And
this one here with where they
mhm,
reunite. It's really beautiful
yeah,
as well.
yeah, yeah. Lots of all of those things that are said through imagery, which is very much in line with Catholic tradition, with the history of images and depicting faith through artwork, whether it be statues or icons or stained glass or paintings. Um, Very much consistent with that, and so that imagery really shows up throughout this whole story. Yeah,
Yeah, there's also that motif of him kind of curled up in the kind of fetal position. There's a couple characters who do that. See right here.
right,
Um,
right,
just really magnificent. I mean, storytelling from both, not just Frank Miller, but also David Mazzucchelli.
right, right, right.
Um, or oh well, when they actually reunite and he saves her life. There you go, right there. Sorry, again, I'm just
Right.
yeah,
No,
just
it's good. It's good stuff. Yeah.
really in love with Mazzucchelli's artwork. If you couldn't tell already.
Right. 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 Yeah, and that's something. And again, kind of being relatively new to getting back into reading comics and graphic novels, I don't know if I always really paid a lot of attention to that. It was there, but it's something that I
I mean, they are a visual
now.
medium. I mean, I generally pay more attention to, who wrote them because, I'm a writer. But yeah, I think the art can really makes it too. So it's not a
Right. Right. Right.
yeah.
Well, Britton, is there? I think we've been going on about just shy of an hour here. Any other aspects of the story or the art or the details of it that that we've missed so far, or we need to talk about? Hopefully, the gist of what we talked about is on the recording, despite the technical
Yeah, despite the
difficulties there.
technical whoopsies. I did want to talk about the Kingpin real quick because I think he's a really great antagonist for Daredevil. I actually knew him. He actually started out as a Spider-Man villain, believe it or not. Um,
Right, right.
I remember him from the old Spider-Man television show from like back in the 90s. There's some bits of it that haven't aged very well, but I have a fondness for it. Nostalgia is a powerful thing. But he actually became a Daredevil villain under Frank Miller's direction. It actually worked a lot. It actually worked very well because Kingpin's a very kind of grounded character, and even though Daredevil has these abilities, he's a very grounded character for the most part. Like he could exist in real life. Well, probably not like that, but uh, like this type of story can happen in a sense.
Right, right. Yeah, Kingpin always lurking in the yeah, not a classic supervillain in terms of kind of wearing a costume or having superpowers. He's just this monstrosity guy, and just through his sheer will of his physical strength, but more importantly, I think his mental is dominance over.
I love his little sumo wrestling outfit that he wears. He's just kind of
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
when he's
yeah,
just
yeah.
he's just wailing on Matt Murdock.
Right. But I think some of the most intense and shocking moments of the book were when he's got his cronies around him, the people in this other mobsters in this syndicate that he controls. When one of them steps out of line, he messes with them bad. I mean, it's like one of them he excuses from the meeting, and then he puts out the word to go whatever, go break his legs or something like that. It was a
Mm.
um, just a just a brutal, brutal person, and obviously the just is indicated by the his pattern of going after Matt Murdock, who wasn't even. It's talked about in the story too that Murdock wasn't even. He was kind of a nothing to him. I mean, he was an
An
annoying,
annoyance. I remember. Yeah, I think he says like an annoyance.
not like his arch enemy. Fight to the death kind of mortal enemy, but this annoyance. But he's obviously bugged him enough that he was going to mess with him and mess with him bad, destroy his life. Like
I
again,
I kind of, and this might be a bit dramatic, but I kind of view the Kingpin as kind of like going back to the Job um comparison. He is kind of like the devil in a sense.
particularly in Job. Thank you for raising that, because in Job, the devil, Satan, is not some kind of guy with kind of the evil looking version of Daredevil with a red and horns and all that. Satan in the book of Job is really this role of the kind of actually he's in the heavenly court, but his role is the tempter, the adversary,
Hmm.
and who messes with people. What he does then to mess with Job to test his faith
And
is take away
oh,
everything,
oh,
which is what Kingpin is doing. So go ahead.
and also, funnily enough, like, well, okay, he does technically harm the man, but like in the Bible, it says in Job, um, it says, "Do what you wish with them, but don't physically touch him." And
Hmm.
again, you see in the first issue, particularly, like he never does anything physical to him. He just completely wrecks his life without,
Right, right, right.
and
Yeah.
then
Go ahead.
ultimately, I think the Kingpin's failure is mainly arrogance, and also the fact that he didn't just finish him off when he had the chance. He kind of that grand supervillain fashion. He has to like make a show of it, I guess.
Right, 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 right. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's really good. I do like their dynamic quite a bit.
right, right. Yeah, I actually remember, you know, old issues of Spider-Man where Kingpin was one of the gallery of villains in the Spider-Man storylines. So yeah, I remember then when he kind of shifted over to being a Daredevil villain more so than just a Spider-Man villain. my Spider-Man villain.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, but yeah, I really enjoy that kind of well, again, I guess he does physically touch him because they have that confrontation in like issue 2, and he just completely wrecks him.
yeah. Murdoch was kind of on his. He was not his at his highest level of strength, so Kingpin could toy with him pretty much and beat him up. And thought he was, throws him in the goes to sleep with the fishes, as they say, in the car in the river.
Yeah,
But
and you know, and he's just absolutely flabbergasted that, you know, Daredevil just doesn't die.
right,
I was
right,
reminded of, I think it's John 1:5 where he says, the darkness cannot overcome the light because the darkness comprehended it not. I'm probably
right.
misquoting it a bit, but that's the general gist
Close.
of it.
Yeah, yeah. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. And the people did not comprehend the light. You got it. Um,
Awesome.
yeah, yeah. Daredevil certainly, that was his. That was of all the death and resurrection moments that occurred throughout the storyline. That, of course, was the most profound, both literally and metaphorically. He comes out of that, a new person. After, but then he dies again because of the pneumonia that sets in. But all of that leads to who he is by the end of the story.
Yeah, just one moment in the story where he's just like walking around. He's basically lost his mind at this point, and he runs into this guy called Turk who's dressed up as Santa Claus, and this other
Yeah,
guy's just like, "Hey, what are you doing? You're just scamming people with the Santa Claus." He's like, "Shut up." It very much like an old like kind of gangster type of film, and then Matt Murdock shows up. It's like, "You stop that!" He just gets stabbed. You're like, "Jeez,
right,
couldn't get
right,
any lower."
right,
I
right.
mean, it's not. I mean, it's not funny. It's really dark, but it's like, you know, there's kind of an absurdity to it, you know.
The yes, comedy of the absurd for sure, macabre humor. Um, all right. Well, I think
But yeah,
we
I
are
think
right
that's
at
about
an
it in
hour.
terms of
Yeah,
everything I wanted to talk about. So,
yeah. Well, thank you again so much for recommending this to me. This is a indicated in my preview of the year video. I think I'm. This is kind of the first foray into me talking a lot more about graphic novels and comics on my channel, and I'll be on your channel, I think, some more, and I will certainly, if there's some additional books in the future that
just hope to do
once I get,
blankets soon. That was my
yeah,
plan. But
yeah, yeah, we'll do that, and I'm going to be talking. I'm going to be reading. I think with Shea of Zachary Shea, he recommended Swamp Thing, the Alan Moore Swamp Thing to me. So
that is
I'm
a
going to
great
be
run. So I do hope you enjoy that. I don't know. I don't know how spiritual it is, but it is an outstanding. It is outstanding nonetheless.
very good, very good. Well, so thank you again, and appreciate your time today talking about and your recommendation of this thoroughly enjoyable, dark but quite profound story of Daredevil Born Again. So thanks, and we'll see you next time.